Hello guys, my name is Philip. I would like to show you about my cluster supercomputers. In this uh, session, I have three Raspberry Pi 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I have three Raspberry Pis. So I would like to combine them into one Raspberry Pi. It's very interesting. I did a lot of effort, time and exhaustion into this. How do you like my tutorial? Yeah. I'm very sorry about my language. I'm not good about that information, so I'm not good about it. So let's get started. So in here I use mobile extern to SSH 3 Raspberry Pi 1, 2, and 3. I suppose that you install SSH Open to remote access Raspberry Pi. Now let's get started. First, we have to update software. Okay. Now we have to update kernel for these Raspberry Pi. We will do Raspberry 1 first. Next. And finally for Raspberry 3, we'll do the same here. Wait here. Now we'll wait for Raspberry 1 and 2. It's very slow, you know. So after we updating kernel, we will have to restart to apply changes. Okay. Yeah. 2 and 3 is updated. We wait for 1. When if Raspberry is done installing kernel, we will restart. We will do with Raspberry 3. We will do with Raspberry 2.
Tỉnh Tây Ninh hôm nay đã tạm giữ hình sự 3 đối tượng về hành vi trộm cắp tài sản. Đó là Đặng Quang Trung, Hà Thanh Tâm và Hồ Hoàng Đệ.
We will wait and then we will reconnect to Raspberry 2 and 3.
Trung đang giả phương để điều tra. Riêng để vào lúc 10 giờ, công an huyện bắt quả tang đang tàng trữ trái phép chất ma túy tại một nhà nghỉ ở xã Hiệp Thạnh. Tại cơ quan điều tra, bước đầu 4 đối tượng thừa nhận đã cùng thực hiện 9 vụ trộm.
Trong những ngày giáp Tết, các đối tượng gây án thường lợi dụng sơ hở cũng như sự mất cảnh giác.
In order to gain speed, we will temporarily disable GUI on these Raspberry 2 and 3 and 1, 2 because we don't need them.
Tiếp theo là phần dự báo nhiệt độ tại các thành phố lớn trên cả nước vào ngày mai.
Xin quý vị đừng rời màn ảnh vì chúng tôi sẽ trở lại chỉ trong 1 phút nữa với các thông tin thể thao ngay sau phần quảng cáo.
Let's turn up to the GUI, okay? And please change use a password because default password of Raspberry Pi is not secure. And because we enable SSH, so we need to change the password too. Okay. Expand file system. Okay. Internationalization. First, I'm in Vietnam, so I have to change my time zone to Vietnam.
Bây giờ phải có thật mới dựng trạo chứ.
Trời ơi, nếu bây giờ người ta tới mình phải làm sao?
And we need to set the country in which my Raspberry Pi is using to
Cũng nặng mổ.
Hả? Tết nguyên dĩ thịt gà mà mới xả mổ.
Yeah.
Em nhờ xíu. Thích cái gì vậy? Nhanh nhanh. Em dọn gấp cho anh cái này sạch sẽ đi, rồi cho anh một quán y chang như vậy nha nhé.
Enable Opera if you prefer to.
Cảm ơn em, nhanh nha.
Em không có ăn thịt gà nữa đâu nha.
Cancel because you can save your Raspberry Pi if you just use one air cooling, and this will affect your Raspberry Pi if you use not good adapter. Okay, we will skip our blog section. We will change host name. Host name is the name that identifies your Raspberry Pi, so we need to change it. Because this is Raspberry 2, we'll change this to Raspberry 2. O2, okay. We will enable SSH.
Thật đã xong rồi, bây giờ em giật
Thôi, giật cái gì mà giật? Qua đây ngồi đi.
Anh nào? Em xin tự giới thiệu. Em là Mỹ
Okay, let's reboot it. To apply changes.
Đây là chuyên làm ăn. Anh nói đang về chỗ không giỡn nữa. Em. Có gì về chỗ? Khách còn sắp tới rồi.
We will do the same for Raspberry 3.
Em đang ngồi chỗ của em rồi mà.
Host,
em là giám đốc công ty đất vàng thiệt hả?
Well, of course we'll enable SSH.
Em cũng có công ty đất vàng của em chứ. Mình làm ăn hậu phẳng. Anh đừng có nghĩ anh là chồng của em thì anh sẽ được ưu tiên nha. Thương trường là chiến trường, anh không được ưu tiên gì đó đâu.
Sao?
We will do the same for Raspberry 1.
Hello. Sao em cũng nói cho anh biết.
Because it's Raspberry 1, which says its host name to Raspberry 1, of course.
Tại sao không đi đến nhà chị? Em phải ghi lại khoảnh khắc đáng nhớ thì chứ. Để làm bằng chứng trước tòa. Lấy nét cái nào? Chồng đẹp trai quá ta. 1, 2.
Cái gì vậy?
3.
Hello, ai gọi vậy?
Tôi xin thề.
After we configuring host name and other information, we will need to update and upgrade packages. It's very important because during installation it will use listed packages to configure stuff. If we don't update, we might get outdated and not the same for across to 3 Raspberry Pis.
Về ảnh hưởng đầu tiên thì họ tiếp xúc trực tiếp với dây chuyền sản xuất trong thời gian dài, trục dốc không phanh.
Họ tập trung ở đây suốt từ sáng tới giờ. Bây giờ thì tình hình chưa có gì, nhưng cứ như vậy là họ sẽ bạo động đó. Thôi được rồi, để tôi nói chuyện với họ cho.
Hai anh để xử lý chuyện này cho. Đây chỉ là phần ngọn thôi. Chắc chắn ở phía sau có người muốn hạ nhục công ty của chúng ta đó. Anh Đức ạ, anh xem phần bên của Nguyên Hương thì em coi như thế nào?
Chị Sương nghĩ Nguyên Hương đứng sau vụ này.
Không phải là nghi ngờ mà em chắc chắn là như vậy. Con nằm xuống đi. Để mời con nằm xuống. Alo, con nghe. Thôi. Tao hiểu rồi. Nhưng mà bây giờ tao có chút chuyện.
That's way.
Chúng tôi gọi lại cho mày sau nhé. Anh à, số một đang còn lại đang trên đường chuyển về Sài Gòn.
Yes, to accept updating packages.
Như vậy thì tốt rồi.
Yes,
Thế thì nói cái tiền nó cho em được không? Em biết đó là theo hợp đồng phải giao hàng rồi mới chuyển tiền. Nhưng mà bây giờ em đang cần một số tiền mặt rất là gấp. Cho nên nếu như anh có thể linh động được thì tốt.
Được, anh đồng ý.
Cảm ơn anh.
Trời ơi, có kia được đâu mà mày lừa đấy.
Chị, giá cổ phiếu của Kim Long tuần trước đến mức kỷ lục rồi nè. Bây giờ chỉ còn bằng 1/3 giá niêm yết thôi ạ. Đến giờ là rồi quyết định rồi đây. Em hãy đặt lệnh bán cổ phiếu Kim Long với giá 1/4 giá niêm yết cho chị. Vậy chị muốn bán bao nhiêu cổ phần? Bán hết. Bán hết. Chị sẽ tạo một làn sóng bán tháo cổ phần Kim Long để coi họ còn trụ được nữa hay không.
Mày có 5 đứa con, uống đi. Uống đi.
Nếu như chai nước này có chứa chất độc hại, ba ơi, test chồng thế nào? Đây này, chấm này mà.
When the updating, it will create a change log. It will describe what does it do. So you can review it. If you've done review it, please press the Q button to escape and then continue installing them. Okay.
Giảm nổi. Đừng nhảy quý, đừng nhảy. Nhau nó đập ta. Ơi coi, cặp ơi coi. Cặp mẹ cho mày coi. Mày không? Tao lo. Chúng ta lo mà. Tao lo.
So to save storage and the size of the film, we will temporarily pause this. Okay. Next, after installing Raspberry Pi 3, we will continue to do following things. First, we need to SSH to another Raspberry 1 and 2. So first, step 1, we will for which Pi we will create RSA public. Then we will deliver each public key to other Raspberry Pi, so it will can connect to another Raspberry Pi. First, publicly is not complicated. First, we will go to the following file named host. We will add the following IP address to host name so that it can recognize Raspberry Pi easily. According to Raspberry 2 is 192.168.1.204. Raspberry 1 is 192.168.1.205. We'll do that. Okay. First for Raspberry 2. We check it. Okay. Yeah. With what we did is now we will generate. It will technically it will create private key and public key. Public key will deliver to another Raspberry Pi. Public key is ISA_RSA.pub. Okay, with the command. We will see that command later. First, we will hit enter to enter RSA. Okay. To other Raspberry Pi, we will do the same. First, we will have to wait. Okay, done. Now we'll generate RSH.
Tại sao lại vô cớ đối với một kẻ thù như bạn? Suốt đời suốt kiếp này, ta biết cái gì về nữa chứ?
Sorry, I forgot. Mistake.
Nè, anh kia, không được. Trời đất ơi, anh làm cái gì? Giờ tôi tên khác. Chỉ là nhân tiện, tôi không có nhân tiện cái gì hết á. Để tôi chịu đi. Hai con,
Okay. Now we will Wait for raspberry 1. Okay, let's get back to the business, shall we? As you can see here, we finished updating and upgrading Raspberry 1. Next, we will continue doing the same with Raspberry 2 and 3. Okay. We'll add IP address and corresponding host name of each Raspberry Pi. In this case, we'll add the Raspberries 2 and 3. Sorry, I forgot it. My bad. Tôi đang ghi âm ra. Next, we will, as you can see here, we complete adding host file and creating RSA password for 3 Raspberry Pis. Next, we will creating easy interface for SSH to each our Raspberry Pi. Follow me. This is very complicated. First, we will copy RSA keychain RSA keys to authorize key file for easier interface to SSH. First, we will do with Raspberry Pi 1, starting with Raspberry Pi 1. We input password. Done. We will add RSA Raspberry 2 and 3. Copy this line. We will use it for generating for copying RSA Raspberry 2 and 3.
Punished for your incident. You will be brought before Führer Hitler! My apologies struck out. We go through a bike to throw no further in the ship. If I drop.
Okay. after delivery, public keys of Raspberry Pi 1 to Raspberry Pi 2 and 3. Raspberry 2 we can now SSH to Raspberry Pi 1. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And Raspberry Pi 3 can gain access to Raspberry Pi 1. Okay, if you would like to uh, ex if you to exit to Raspberry Pi 1, you just need to enter exit command. If you return to Raspberry Pi 3, if you would like to exit to Raspberry Pi 1, you simply enter exit command. You return to Raspberry Pi 2. The easy understanding is in order to if you need to access to another machine, we have to give is our RSH public key. Easy, right? And if we assemble, for example, if we assemble first directory, we will have three ID of Raspberry 2 and 3. It means that Raspberry 2 and 3 now can access to Raspberry 1. And now we need to install API package. API package means basic patching interface. It will, for example, if we need to calculate a task, it will MPI will separate small task from a task from the task, and it will deliver the task to Raspberry 2 and 3. So it will technically it will 3 times faster than calculating Raspberry itself. So to download that package, please go to this website, go to Google and search the following uh, text MPICH and using this link to in this widget to download this link. First, go to download for organization and using wget-ting to download this. We do the same. We do the same with this. Now back to Raspberry 1 movie and zip it. With the following comments are the XF file we already downloaded. Same with this one. Sorry. this one too. Yeah, back to Raspberry 3. Go to extracted directory. Before installing MPI-ch, we need to install the following package. Please input the following command: sudo apt get install vim for an editor, my refer editor, Python dev used for later procedure. Vim Python dev git for maintaining later repo. Gportrait. We use this when installing MPI-ch. Mail for merging and diff2 for git2. Until dependent. And if you would like to install more, just to use system, you need to install Deal Central too. Enter. Copy this for later use. And hit install. Say yes, please. And we'll do this for Raspberry Pi 1, 2, 2. We will download installing for 3 Raspberry Pi. And also I forgot to install Tmod. Tmod is very powerful for splitting single terminal to multiple terminal. We need to install it too. Same Raspberry 2, 3. Next we use to make the thing. Press Tmux. Press Control plus P and then press double quote character. C will split single terminal to half terminal into two terminals. Next, go to Disney, and we will see a tutorial about installing C. We will it will require MPI-ch 3.2, a C compiler, CPP compiler, a Fortran compiler. We did installing them in the previous installation procedure. Instead GC means C compiler, G++ means C++ compiler, and G Fortran for Fortran compiler. Yeah, we complete this requirement. Next we will install. We will install them in the following directory. User directory. Yeah. First, we'll go to MBSH directory. Press configure. User. We will install in the USR directory, and you can access its binary everywhere. Check it again, see if this is correct or not. Configure, prefix, equal, user. Hey. See, check for require package.
Rồi lụ đèn cái chảy lên.
We do the following things with Raspberry Pi 3. Checking. If you would like to show a big screen about checking procedure, you can click by the following combination: Control P, then press Z button. Same here. One tips about switching between the terminals. If you would like to switch between terminals, simply press combination Control P, then press key up, down, left, right. And this thing to switch between two terminal, we will press combination Control P, up and down. Then to show the whole terminal, we will press the combination Control P, Z. Okay, very convenient. Back to Raspberry 1, we'll click the following command. Yeah. We wait for them to check out this very long procedure. If you can have a cup of tea or two, yeah. If you see no error in the configure procedure, then configure procedure is completed. Let's see. Next, we will after configure, we will hit the button. This make, then make install. Make, right? like Raspberry 3 will enter make command. Hit enter. Okay. Oh, Raspberry 1 is still in configure procedure. Yeah. Okay. While waiting for Raspberry 2 and 3 to complete the make procedure, let's continue to Raspberry 1. You see this completing is configure procedure. Let's make it. Let's wait again. This is a very daunting procedure, but it's necessary, so let's wait it. Oh, as you can see here, background Raspberry Pi 3 is done. Now let's start to make install it. Before make install it, remember you must use this command with sudo refresh. So sudo it make install. So that it could write is the binary to privilege directory, such as user directory, as we mentioned before. So sudo make install. Then let's wait for if Raspberry 1 2 make procedure and wait for Raspberry Pi 3 procedure. You can see here in Raspberry Pi 3 make install procedure is complete. To make sure that the installation is successful, we need to test it with the following command: to and hostname. If we see this output is correctly installed, let's wait for Raspberry 2 and 1 make install complete. Okay. So Raspberry Pi 3 installation is complete. Now let's install another package. That is PyMPI for Python. That's what it is, right? So it is. According to Google, uh, according to Google, yeah, package provide according to this is a package by Python by the information passing API standard. So we need to start it by following. Let's download it. Okay. For Raspberry Pi 3, we go to download directory for organization. Next, we will go to download section, copy to latest version, right? And then using Wicked Team to download it. Wait. Okay, wrong. Okay, download it. Next, using TarTwin to extract it, MPI4. MPI4, I go to that, and using we will use this version of Python 3 to install it. 3 setup Python install. Install wrong, correct it. Let's wait. As you can see here, Python 2 and 1 is still in make procedure. Actually, it's very slow. I recommend that you buy Python Raspberry Pi 3 for speed or for high performance. Okay. By the way, if to test PI4 High is working or not, we will tie the following function here in the demo directory. If we say that it's run at the following number, it's okay. Okay. So as we can see here, in Raspberry Pi 2 is command is the main procedure. Because we see anything error in here. So the final and following step is to run the following Microsoft procedure. Remember, must require sudo image to copy file to source user file, user directory. Okay, hit it. Let's wait it. Okay, shall we? That's very slow now. So let's wait it. It's very fast, like stop procedure, stop procedure is very fast. So the procedures of Raspberry Pi is complete. Let's start installing Pi for Python. Go to this, copy its location using widget tune to download it. Hit enter. Hey, sorry. We must go to directory download or installing. Hit widget button 2, enter. So extract it, shall we? Install it. before installing, we need to give this pseudo privilege. Yeah. Let's wait, shall we? As you can see here, it's done installing MPI for Python. Now let's test it. Okay, shall we? Run the following command. Hit enter. Let's see what's the result. Okay, if you see the following command, it's done. You can see here, Raspberry Pi is finished installing. Finished its make procedure. Let's continue by typing sudo make install, because make install will copy files into user directory, so we need to make it sudo privilege. Okay, enter. Okay, as you can see here, Raspberry Pi 1 just finished installing. Let's continue our job, right? First, location using the QChat to download. Hit enter. Okay, let's extract item. Just simply run sudo pip sudo python 3 setup. Install. And wait, right? Alright, now let's get started. After installing MPI for Python for Raspberry 1, let's start it, okay? MPI for MPI execute, download, MPI for Pi, demo, hello, hi. Oh, I forgot about that. Sorry. Hit. Waiting.
Làm sao tôi biết việc này chưa bị xảy ra? 2 lần trước làm sao tớ biết không? Chú ơi để biết. Cậu không bao giờ dừng lại và nghĩ là
There we go. If see testing, it means that task API4 Python is successfully installed. Okay.
cậu biết tớ muốn làm gì? Jess,
Now let's compile power processing of all three Raspberry Pi into
các
one
cậu
day.
tới đây, David tới đây, thì
First,
cậu phải đi, cậu phải đi. David tới đây, David tới đây, David tới đây, David tới đây, David tới đây.
let's create
Jess không?
a config directory.
Jessie,
And a processes directory.
chú ơi, không, tớ có thể cứu cậu.
Now let's get started. Go to config. Will you get to uh, manage file?
Làm gì vậy?
Yeah. Please input host name of Raspberry Pi. Here we have 3 Raspberry Pis with the host name Raspberry Pi 1, Raspberry Pi 02, Raspberry Pi 03. We will save it in the file name machine files. Okay. And then let's move to processes. Let's copy. API. Okay. So let's use Gittin to manage demo. The demo directory will contains demo file so that we can see visually about sharing computing. Oh, first. Need to configure some information such as username, user email, so that we can know who is submitting code.
Em vẫn đeo vòng cổ à? Phải, em thấy thích lắm. Bạn nghĩ sao? Trường nước lạnh quá. Cảm ơn. Chúng ta phải đi thôi. Đi nào là Lâm Tấm. Nhanh. Giờ chúng ta đi đâu đây anh Ngô Thắng? Anh không biết nữa. Thế là Nhật Bản. Chúng ta có thể đi bộ tới đó đúng không? Nhật Bản của tớ. Là chạy à? Không, là máy bay. Con chim. Đúng rồi, nhưng là chim gì? Này không được nói. Xin lỗi nhé.
Sorry, I need to do something. So let's check it again to make it sure Gittin has added for tracking was folder demo. Okay, done. Let's go to config. Now let's clone from all the Raspberry Pi.
Let's walk up those roads. The chairs are all set up. Where'd they go? Oh, well, I can't let such a cozy chair get away. Armando! Need purple one? They're all over. Sure. Right after a little siesta.
It's okay. Do one thing. Okay, we're the same on Raspberry Pi 2. Let's test it, okay? Let's see this. The process is on 3 different Pi.